Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend.
Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator has a perfect ending. From the bone-chilling music to the cold, bitter speech from Henry, this conclusion to the almost 4-year-long series was absolutely everything the community could ever ask for. This, what seemed to be filler minigame for fans to enjoy over the holidays, had undoubtedly changed the course of the franchise forever. So in this video, I'm going to be covering every Five Nights at Freddy's ending and how one of the world's largest horror franchises created one of the best endings in media history 3 times over. Over the course of the first couple games, Five Nights at Freddy's had no real set ending. The first game had a few pieces of lore that left the game's story open-ended, since Scott really didn't know if the game would do well or not. His past games had all been criticized and ridiculed for its creepy animatronic-like art style, which reflects a lot in the main series. Although, story elements that were included, like the Bite of 87, were the building blocks of the game's lore, generating a ton of intrigue for the next installment in the series. But that wouldn't be happening anytime soon. The first game was just released, right? Five Nights at Freddy's 2 expanded on the game's lore, introducing now essential story elements and characters like the puppets, a bunch of Easter egg animatronics, and minigames. Minigames are a common theme in the main series, from giving children cake to following a suspicious purple man to your death. Minigames are mostly how the game communicates its story. FNaF 2 is no exception, as the game goes into further detail about the original 5 murders and the perpetrator of these crimes. But even then, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 isn't the entire picture. It's still telling an incomplete story. So, when you complete all 5 nights, you still get the common trend of being handed a note, a star, and being told to fuck off. Although, when Five Nights at Freddy's 3 released, this all changed. FNaF 3 was Scott's best work yet, with the game including 3 endings: the bad, the good, and the secret ending. When players beat the game normally, they are met with this minigame in a familiar location. This is Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, the first game's location, but it's leaking and falling apart. Throughout FNaF 3, you've seen this place countless times, being met with it night after night, following Shadow Freddy until you can't anymore. And then suddenly... But now, you aren't an animatronic. After Night 5, you take the role of a crying child, and you're led to the exact same demise you've seen 4 other times. But this time, you can push past the invisible barrier, walking past the broken corpses of Bonnie, Chica, Freddy, and Foxy. You're now outside the safe room, with their lost souls blocking the terrified William Afton from escaping, with him having to face the consequences of what he did. And in a moment of desperation, Afton climbs inside a spring Bonnie suit, only to be instantly crushed by spring logs, leaving him dead in a pool of his own blood. Players are now met with this end screen, either reading bad ending or just the end. In the bad ending, there are still lights illuminated within the masks, representing that the spirits of the animatronics are not at rest. So how do you free them? How do you get the good ending? If you complete a series of hidden minigames throughout each night where you give cake to the lost souls, on the final night, your work becomes evident. This is the Happiest Day minigame, by far one of the most important moments in the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise. By giving the original 5 children cake over the course of the last 5 nights, you've been metaphorically freeing their souls, giving them something they will never have again. And if you walk past Freddy, Foxy, Chica, and Bonnie and give the last crying child, Golden Freddy, a cake, they finally let go. They finally let go of the anger towards the villain you've been fighting over and over this whole time. Over the past 3 games, they've been taking their anguish out on you, the security guard, since there's nothing else they can do. They were trapped, isolated, and nothing makes this hit harder than the somber, staticky music behind it. It's unsettling, but almost happy. You now get to the same screen, but the masks are empty. You've put the spirits of the 5 animatronics to rest. And that's it, right? There's loose ends to the story, sure, but some things are better left forgotten. And that is the heart-wrenching end to Five Nights at Freddy's. But is it? Because if you look at the good ending screen again, you'll notice Golden Freddy isn't there. And if you beat Night 6, also known as Nightmare Mode, you'll be shown a newspaper. Fazbear Fright has been burnt to the ground, with Springtrap inside the building. Afton is dead, but if you brighten the picture, you'll see something far more disturbing than you bargained for. March 4th, 2015, the same day that FNAF 3 was released, Scott posted an image of a hat on his website. To be more specific, the original Fazbear hat. At the time, the community thought that this meant the end for the series. The hat had been put down for the last time. And it was over, with YouTube videos and articles being made as a final goodbye to the franchise. And that's it, video over. But, of course, the hat's fucking gone. Five Nights at Freddy's 4, more commonly known at the time as the final chapter, was a massive surprise for the community. Not only after FNAF 3's completely satisfying ending, but also how early it was released, with Scott really pushing himself to make a scarier game. People weren't happy with FNAF 3 as a horror game. People hated the jump scare. It just wasn't scary anymore. So Five Nights at Freddy's 4 was scheduled for a Halloween release, but just like FNAF 2, the game was released months earlier. And just like the previous entry, this one ended with a bang. Or should I say, a box. When you beat the final night, Night 5, you're met with an iconic minigame. This is the party, which the game has been slowly counting down to this entire time. And you're at a place you've seen throughout this entire game, Fredbear's Family Diner. You're playing as the crying child, chronically known as Evan in the books, but But after beating Night 5, the child's older brother's friends are taunting him for his phobia of animatronics. And in a cruel prank, his brother and his friends lift the child up and carry his flailing body throughout the diner. And as they approach the main stage, the brother decides to let Evan have a closer look at the animatronics, pushing him into Fredbear's mouth. And not only a second later, Fredbear crushes the child, and you instantaneously get booted to the main menu, like you weren't supposed to see what just happened. With a new option available, Night 6. Night 6 is very different from the other nights. Not only can you see references to the horrific minigame in the loading screen, but after 4 AM, it's only Fredbear. Once you've beaten the night, you're presented with another minigame. This time, you can see the crying child once again, with his own plushies that we saw at the very beginning of the game comforting him. You might notice though, this isn't the plushies talking. This is Michael, Evan's older brother. As he speaks, you might notice how one by one, each plushie disappears until only the child is left. And I'll let you hear what happens next. You're met with nothing but the main menu again, now with an extra star and another option, Nightmare Mode. This night is like no other we've seen before. This is the 420 mode of FNAF 4, the hardest challenge in the game. Just like Night 6, the main 4 animatronics attempt to kill you until 4 AM, until which they are replaced by a new animatronic, Nightmare. This is the game's personification of death, the Grim Reaper of FNAF 4. Because of how the crying child was killed, death takes the form of Fredbear. And when you beat this Nightmare, you're presented with one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in the entire franchise. This is the locked box. You can click on the locks as many times as you want, but it can't be opened. And after a short while, a message appears, reading, "Perhaps some things are better left forgotten for now. On the 7th of October 2016, Five Nights at Freddy's sister location was released, and with full voice acting and a far more futuristic setting, this was Scott's biggest project yet. And even though having evident flaws we can see in retrospect, this game was praised for being the best in the series, and sister location's ending is no exception. Unlike the previous 4 games, Sister Location is a very story-based game. Each night has a different gameplay loop to it, and on night 5, you have to attempt to fix Baby. But from the very beginning, something is very wrong. In the elevator, you are warned about technicians working on the job, saying,
"Please be aware that there are still 2 technicians on site today. Try to avoid interfering with their work if possible. Also, feel free to ask them why they are still there and encourage them to go home."
And where are these technicians?
Great. Now let's check on Funtime Foxy.
This is only the beginning, because as you try to fix Baby, she tells you,
"Something bad happened yesterday. Something bad always happens. I don't want it to happen again. There is something bad inside of me. I'm going to be taken to the scooping room soon."
As you're guided towards the scooping room, you are told that Ballora is in there with you, but little does the player know, this is not Ballora, because you've been tricked. You've been lured into the room, all the animatronics have already been scooped, and a mysterious figure appears in the window, looming over you. This is Ennard. It apologizes, saying that,
"There is nowhere to go when we look like this. But if we looked like you, then we could hide. The scooper only hurts for a moment."
and before you're even given a chance to process the horrific events that just unfolded, the screen turns black and shows a cutscene of a bathroom mirror. A shadowy figure limps in front of it, opening its eyes to reveal. And that's the end of Sister Location, but is it? Because if you don't listen to Baby and go up and left in Ballora's gallery, you enter the private room, a tight, claustrophobic space. Circus Baby is caught incredibly off guard. The plan that she was so sure would work had failed, and now you have to battle through this incredibly difficult night against Ennard, with really only audio cues to know when to close which door. And as the night progresses, Baby gets more and more desperate to get into your office. She suddenly drops the facade she built this entire time, referring to herself as we. And the further and further you get through the night, Ennard gets more and more aggressive. One last desperate attempt before they are scrapped for what they made themselves into. Even using the voice of Elizabeth Afton in an attempt to emotionally bait the player, Michael Afton, into giving in and letting them in. This masterpiece of an ending ends with this line:
"I will find a way out."
But even though you've escaped and survived a living hell, Ennard still follows you home. You were just delaying the inevitable. Pretend it's the 4th of December 2017. Scott posts a small Five Nights at Freddy's spin-off game on Steam for his fans to enjoy for the holidays. It seems to be a small indie pizza making simulator, and it doesn't cost anything. So curiosity gets the best of you and thousands of others who decide to install it. And it really didn't seem like much, with its minimalist art style and low amount of customization. The game is all about feeding children mediocre pizza, and that's about it. But it's about to reveal its darkest secrets.
Document results.
Now, really, this is Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, a game where you manage your pizzeria, tend to guests, And yeah, they don't tell you everything in the contract. Whether you like it or not, this is where you'll spend your evenings, printing leaflets, unclogging toilets, etc. This is the main gameplay loop in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, and there's no challenge to it, it's really just clicking buttons on a computer until you hear something. Is there something in the ventilation? It's surely nothing. Nothing could even be in there. Slightly panicked, you check the movement detector. It's just your imagination, right? This is what FNAF 6 does perfectly. Complete hopelessness. On this night, you have no idea how to fend off the animatronics. You don't even know if what you're doing even works, and the most unsettling of it all, what is even hunting you? Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator has a lot of endings, 7 to be exact, from the bankruptcy ending where you just run out of money to the insanity ending because you saw something that you shouldn't have and no one will believe you. Aside from these joke endings though, one stands far out from the rest. This is the one where you do exactly what the game wants you to do. Salvage all the animatronics. This is the completion ending. The ending starts with Scrap Baby talking to us, the first animatronic we saw in the game, saying that
You gathered them all together in one place, just like he asked you to.
we've been tricked, we've been played like a puppet on strings, and this is exactly what she wanted. But then, before Baby can say any more,
Connection terminated. You have all been called here, into a labyrinth of sounds and smells, misdirection, and misfortune. This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole, so don't keep the devil waiting, old friend.
But suddenly, Cassette Man switches tones. He's now addressing his daughter, the victim of the Give Cake to the Children minigame. He's drowned in his own guilt and remorse. He immensely regretted trusting his best friend and old business partner, William Afton.
My daughter, if you can hear me, I'm sorry that on that day, the day you were shut out and left to die, no one was there to lift you up into their arms, the way you lifted others into yours. This ends, for all of us, in communication.
All the lost souls are finally free. The people who suffered get to rest, and the killer, the one behind the torment of the past 6 games, is rotting in hell, with Ultimate Custom Nights being the embodiment of it. But, as always, is it truly the end?